first of all, nine-star key is a system of astrology that was found in China, it was found in Tibet, and it was also found in Japan. Okay, probably originally it was considered to be found originally in the Lamaseries in the Tunhuang district of China, and I think some of them date back several thousand years ago when they found what were called Lo Shu maps, or basically it's a map of what's called the magic square, and each one of these magic squares corresponds to various years. In Tibet, it was called the system of Meiwas, or birthmarks. In China, it was called nine-house astrology, and the Japanese called it nine-star key. Key meaning like chi or energy. Okay, the nine energetics. Okay. The system, if you look at it, although it's very, very simple to calculate, is at the same time probably the core of Oriental astrology. So in other words, all I need to have is your birth day, month, and year, and I can give you two numbers that are associated with your particular energetic, what you were born with. Come on in. Okay? And from that, you'll learn a lot about some very deep aspects of who you are as a person. Then when you start looking at the other aspects of astrology, such as in Oriental astrology, you look at the animal sign, you would look at the element of the particular year. There would be other things that you would be able to find out as well in terms of basically other astro influences in your life and do a lot more prediction. What I look at as nine-star key is nine-star key lets you know sort of like the basic core of who you are. And once you begin to understand that better, then what you can do is you begin to empower yourself to, rather than resist who you are, you begin to go more effectively, act more effectively with who you are. Now, into the stories I said I was going to say before I said all that. My first discovery about the significance in working with nine-star key happened when I was working as an intern at a drug alcohol rehab center. And what happened was that a friend of mine had told me to really start looking into nine-star key a little bit more, and so what I decided to do was to play with it a little bit. And in playing with it, what I did was I went into this internship, and I would be sitting in psychotherapeutic groups with psychiatrists. And you might be familiar with, in macrobiotics, we talk about the 5 elements, right? Okay, or the 5 transformations. And you have what's called tree. Tree oftentimes is also in some books called wood. And you have fire. And you have earth. And you have metal, which in some systems is called air. And you also have water. Okay. These are the ways in which nature just transforms itself over time. And there's various smaller cycles and larger cycles of these transformations going on continuously. They're going on at submolecular levels. They're going on in ways in which you process information and integrate new things into your life. There's a way in which all these elements work together, and we have no time to go into the dynamics of this, okay? But what happened was that I decided, not knowing anything about the people that were in this drug rehab, what I decided to do was just find out what their birth dates were, okay? And I got their birth dates, and I was able to calculate what their nine-star key numbers were. Then I put that aside, and I went into the room for a psychotherapeutic session with this group. And what happened was that there was the conversation began to flow. And one person would make a comment, the next person after them would agree or disagree, the person after that would challenge the person that commented before, etc., etc. And all I would mark down is the name of the person, whether they agreed, confronted, or supported the previous person's comments. And that's all I did, was I marked it down that way. All right? I didn't listen to the content. All I listened to was the kind of feel that the person had in the interaction with the previous person talking. And what I found out was, basically, after then, I began to pull all the birth dates into it and all their nine-star key numbers. And every number is associated with a particular element, particular transformation. And what happened was, the tree person had an idea. The fire person got excited about it, was mad at the person who was metal, because of something that they had said previously. The earth person came to the metal person's rescue. And then the water person began to look at the whole thing in a much bigger way, began to challenge the fire person's original challenge of the metal person, and I was literally watching certain laws in the 5 transformations. That's all that was going on, was a dance of elements. There are elements, ways in which these elements work to support each other. There's ways in which these elements control each other and support each other. And that's all that was going on. It was the most bizarre situation because for the solid hour, nothing varied from these laws. Okay? So I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. You know? This is very interesting in terms of understanding human interaction. Okay? That being said, I realized that there was some significance in terms of looking at relationships, not only to oneself, but also to the people around you. And at the same time, and this was where the caveat comes in, when 9-star key was originally introduced in the macrobiotic community, which is when I heard about it, this was like in 1978, 78 and 79, what happened was everybody got really into what their number was and whether their numbers were supported by or nurtured by other numbers of the people around them. And so what happened was you would look in the old East-West journals, and rather than see, a Sagittarius looking for a Capricorn, et cetera, whatever the signs are like that way, what people were saying was a 9 fire is looking for a 5 earth to nurture, that kind of thing. And this was in the back of the personal parts of the old East-West journal, okay? Bill Tara at one point commented to me, because he wrote the comments on the back of my book, which is at the bookstore. It's a complete guide to 9-star key. And he said that some of the worst marriages he ever saw were based on 9-star key. Okay? And the way in which I look at that, and I looked at a lot of the literature. I looked at the literature in Japan. I looked at the literature in China, Chinese literature. I also looked at macrobiotic literature. And there was a whole thing about who you should be supported by and who you would feel controlled by, et cetera, et cetera. But let's be realistic about relationships. Sometimes in a relationship, you need to feel like you support somebody. Sometimes in a relationship, you might have certain aspects of your character that get very easily out of control, and it's useful to have someone in your life that tells you to shut up periodically or to listen at a deeper level. Sometimes what happens is that you really enjoy feeling the support of other people. Okay? So sometimes you need to feel in control, sometimes you need to be controlled, sometimes you need to support, sometimes you need to feel like you're supporting someone else. Okay? All those things are a part of relationships, and sometimes we have certain patterns that work in helping us to grow up faster. And therefore to say that this particular kind of 9-star key relationship is going to be better than any other isn't necessarily so. The answer I tell people is go with your heart, and then let's look at the dynamics and see what comes up. And if you don't like those dynamics, well, then maybe you should become, maybe this won't work, or maybe you can learn to become friends with it, because the more you become friends with it, in all likelihood, it becomes more of a dance. It becomes more of something that has a little bit more comedy rather than tragedy to it. And also with this, what I say to people is a relationship that's going to work is one where people want to work in the relationship. Okay? So it doesn't matter what the numbers are. What can be important, however, is understanding the dynamics in the relationship so that you don't go to counseling for 4 or 5 years to resolve a certain kind of situation. Let's say in a relationship what it is that you have someone in your life, tree energy. Okay, tree energy is very inspiring, lots of ideas, has some difficulty in follow-through. Okay? And at the same time has a kind of intensity that sometimes is very intense but then kind of withdraws, okay, and needs a lot of independence. And let's say a water person is married to a tree person, and this tree person feels sometimes like they need to get away, okay? And your concern is, this isn't good. In a relationship, we should always do things together. We should always be willing to share certain things. Why does this person have to go away? There must be something wrong with me that this person has to go away from me. And in fact, what might be going on, and what you could do then, is you could go and spend, $20, $30, $40,000 worth of psychotherapy and counseling, and then come to the conclusion that your partner is a very independent person. And 9-star key would tell you that immediately. Okay? So there would be certain things about their character that you wouldn't have to fight anymore. And there's certain ways in which you are inside yourself that you wouldn't have to fight anymore either. Okay? Because each one of these numbers has its own paradox. Okay? Like there's this kind of rule that we have in our life that we're supposed to be consistent. Okay? And there's a basic rule in Buddhist philosophy which says avoid being consistent. Okay? Because we're not. We're not consistent. Okay? We have different things that grow us up at different times, certain kinds of energetics that stimulate us one way, and then the next week or the next month or the next year, we're doing something entirely different. Okay? If you're a parent, you certainly see that in yourself in terms of how you react to your own kids. All right? So what we need to do is try to erase in our minds the idea that, based on humanistic psychological principles, that a good relationship looks like this. It has all these characteristics and traits. Because in all likelihood, in every one of your relationships, you are going to find that you have paradoxes inside yourself. There are ways in which you really connect and ways in which you feel not connected. There are certain years where it feels better, certain months where it feels better, and it goes like that. And the whole idea is that you learn from it. You grow from it. It's no longer something which you feel imprisoned by. A friend, Lino Stanchik, said either the dog can wag the tail or the tail can wag the dog. Regardless, the tail's going to keep on moving. Okay? So there's certain ways in which you have to come to understand how to work with this as a process of self-discovery and learning how to relax more. We get back to that word that's used so often, probably I imagine John Bradshaw will mention this lots, is the word acceptance. Acceptance of oneself, who one is as a person. Now, all that being said, because you all wanted to find out what your numbers are, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to go around and I'm going to give you the mathematical formulas to understand what your numbers are. And then we'll talk about the elements that they're associated with. Okay? Somebody give me a birth year. 1955. Okay, that's a good one to start with because it's sort of complex. All right? 1955. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to take the last two numbers in your year. Okay? And you add them together and you end up with the number 10. Okay? And then what you do is you reduce those to a single digit. 1 plus 0 is 1. And you subtract it from 10, and you end up with the number 9. So that is the year number for you. 9-star key number a year for you. Okay? If it was 1953, it'd be 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 is a single digit, so you don't have to subtract it from anything. Add it together, so you end up with 10 minus 8 from 10 is 2. Okay?
The calendar year for this is Chinese?
It's Chinese. Therefore, if you were born in January up until February 3rd, what will happen is you go to the previous year. If you were born February 1st, 1940, it would actually be that the year that you take is 1939. Okay? Or if it's 1960, January 10th, 1960, you would go 1959. Okay? So, that will give you the number that's associated. Everybody's figured out their year now? Everybody's got it? All right, go ahead. Last two numbers. Okay. So, no, subtract it from 10. Add those two numbers, add it so you get a single digit, okay, and then subtract that number from 10. Okay, you got it now? Everybody else? Okay. How do you get a minus figure? What year? All right, so it's 67 or 49, okay. Wasn't that a compliment? 4 and 9. 4 and 9 is 13, right? All right, 4 and 9 is 13. 1 and 3 is 4. Yeah, those two. Whatever you do, whatever you get, it was kind of like what we did originally, okay? So we got the number 10 and we added 1 plus 0. So 13, 4 and 9 is 13. 1 plus 3 is 4 from 10 to 6. Okay? All right. Now, I'm also going to give you a second number. Okay? And for the second number, what I have to do is I have to go around and give it to you because it's based on another kind of chart. And this is the first number you've gotten has to do with your year. Okay? It's your year element. It has to do with your greatest potential for self-actualization. How you become more of who you are. How you become stronger in who you are as a person. Okay? As the traits that relate to the number of your year emerge, you feel better and better about who you are as a person. Okay? The second number I'm going to be giving you corresponds to that area in your life which has to do with the first 18 years of your life and situations that you come into that are kind of stressful for you. When you're under stress, it's the aspects of your second number that I'm going to give you that begin to show up more in your character. Okay? So, let's go around and let's just go with full birth dates. Go ahead. So 74, so you were an 8, is that right? All right, you were an 8. Okay, so 12-4. Okay, so what we're looking at is that is you're an 8 and a 2. Your second number is a 2. Okay? 33, so you were a 4, right?
Yes.
Okay, so a 4, 5, 521? 521, and you were a 5. You're a 4, okay, okay. 521, so you're a 4, 5. You're a 4, 5.
4, 5.
Yeah, your 5 is your second number.
7, 29, 26.
So you're a 9 and a 729, so you're a double 9. Okay?
12, 4,
61, so you're a 3, and what was it? 12 what?
4.
12, 4, okay. So that second number is, you're a 3, 5. Okay? 64, so you're a 9 and what? What was it, 10? 1022. Okay, 1022 is you're a 9 and a 6. Okay? 49, so you're a 6 and what was it? 10-3? Okay, 10-3. You said a 6? What was your first number?
10, 1, 0, 3.
Oh, you were a 3. You were a 3. Okay, so you're a 3, 7. 10-4 was? 10-3 is the same. Okay, so it's 10-4. 10, no, sorry, 10, it's a 7. It's a 7. Okay, all right. Actually, just give me your last number. It's much easier because I'm doing the whole calculation in my head the whole time. So just give me your year. What was your year?
42.
No, just give me the number associated with your year.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4.
That's a 4. Okay, and what was the?
626.
626. Okay, so in a 4, what we're looking at is a 4. It's a double 4. Okay.
The number's 9. Okay, 6.
It's 1. It's a 9 and a 1. Okay. 5, and what's your birthday? February the 10th, so it's a 5 and a 2. Okay. Oh, I went down too far. Go ahead. 12, 17. Okay, so 12, 17 is 9 and a 4.
Number 7 and
11:30. Okay, so it's a 7 and an 8. Okay. 8, 7. So all right, August the 7th. Okay, so it's a 3. Okay. 3/18, March 6 and 3/18. Okay, so it's 3/18, March the 18th. It was a 4. No, sorry, 3/18, March. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's just a 4. Okay.
4, 25.
All right, so we're looking at an 8 and what? What was it? 425. All right, 425. 425. D6. It's a 9. 8 and a 9.
624.
624. Okay. So what we're looking at is a 5 and a 7. Okay, 5 and a 7.
6, 11, 14. My number's 6.
Oh, okay. All right, that was, yeah, definitely. Okay, so, all right, 6, 11, 14. Okay, so what we're looking at is November the 14th. So it's a 6 and a 5.
6, 528.
528. So what we're looking at is a 2, a 6 and a 2.
Could you also tell me for another 1, 9, 5?
A 9, 5. Oh, interesting. Okay, it's a 2, a 1 and a 2. Okay. Okay. What's, for a 6, okay, 9/5. Okay, for a 6/9/5, September the 5th. Okay, so what we're looking at in that situation is an 8. Okay?
Number 5, 112.
So you're going back the previous year? Did you go back the previous year? All right, so it's a 1, 112, and for a 5?
Right.
Okay. What we're looking at then is a 9. Okay. And did we get everybody? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what each element corresponds to. All right, so you're going to know which number is your dominant element in terms of your year, and you're going to know what I call your child number. The child number corresponds to your month. Okay? So the numbers are this. The numbers 1 is associated with water. 2 is associated with earth. 3 and 4 are associated with tree. 5 is associated with earth. 6 is associated with metal. 7 is associated with metal. 8 is associated with earth. And 9 is associated with fire. No, actually what we're looking at is it's both numbers. You see, the elements of the numbers don't change. So now what you know is you know what the element of your year is and the element of your month. Okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to talk very briefly about the relationship aspects of each one of these numbers. Okay? How you relate and how you handle intimate situations. Okay? Now, as you listen, be aware of this. There will be paradoxes. There will be paradoxes in what I say. And it might even be, there's more chairs over here. Chairs over here and whatnot. Because if you're around the corner, yeah, come on. Oh, you have to use that. Okay. Sure. And you might even say, well, how is it that I can be, very controlling at the same time wanting to be very independent, or how do I deal with this? And it's going to be, depending on circumstances, you will be one thing and then you'll be another thing, which is why it is that you are inconsistent. Okay? By and large, we are all inconsistent. Okay? Let's start with the number 1, water. Okay? 1, water is the kind of person, and you can look at this in terms of your year, or you can look at that in terms of your month. 1, water people are in some ways very philosophical and deep thinking. They like to have people close to them, but don't like to share what they're doing with other people all the time. They like to have it so that they know you're in the other room and doing something separately. They like to have their own little private space. They are the kind of people that when you ask them questions about things that mean a lot to them, especially things that relate to emotions, it takes them a while for them to reveal them to you. If you push them to reveal what's going on with them, you will get an opposite side of their nature, which is their tendency to be rather cavalier about what they say. They'll say anything to get you off their back. Okay? They have very, very few people that they share what's going on with them about. They're somewhat cautious in their interactions. Sexuality and spirituality are very, very closely linked together. These are people that oftentimes you've heard this word that's bandied around in really stupid ways in this culture right now, the word tantra. These are people that actually could learn Taoist exercises to strengthen their sexual vitality, and also would find that the more they enjoy and go deeper into their experience of their sexuality, they tap into a very, very deep spiritual side of who they are. If we look at the number 2, the number 2, Earth, is what's called the primal mother number. These are people that have a natural sense of empathy with the people around them and have a characteristic kind of quality of sadness about who they are. They're kind of like this heavy-hearted, like the Earth Mother who feels connected to things around them. They are very, very observant people about what's going on around them in their lives. And yet at the same time, they can act as if they're social butterflies. very, very perceptive, very sad, but at the same time, just talk very lightly about what's going on. Not because there's not much is going on underneath the surface, but because it's almost as if things matter to them so deeply that what they need to do is they need to treat it a little bit more lightly. These are the kind of people that make incredible hosts. They love to host things. They're concerned about the atmosphere of the environment that they're in. They care a tremendous amount about people. They oftentimes have higher phone bills because they need to talk to people about their problems, and they are actually people that want to hear how people feel about what's going on. They are very, very devoted. They are very home-oriented. Yet at the same time, they will get very vindictive. It's very strange, very committed, very loving in a relationship, but if they are unacknowledged for their caring, they can become incredibly vindictive and will try to destroy anything that they'll destroy a relationship. They'll destroy what's going on simply because of the fact, and when they're doing that, it usually means that they're not being appreciated for who they are. Okay? They are, in intimate situations, very nurturing in their passion. Okay? They like to see their partner nourished and nurtured. Yet at the same time, they can also be very, very self-deprecating, which means sometimes what they'll do is they'll engage in wanting to keep the peace by having sex. And yet at the same time, what it is that it definitely fills a kind of social function for them. It sort of like balances the relationship. Very, very home-oriented people like to have their home situation stable, secure, okay? Not very detailed-oriented. Curious about things. They're fascinated by things around them. But at the same time, they can't remember detail for the life of them. Okay? If you look at the three-tree person is the most independent of all the numbers. Independence is an important aspect of a relationship for a three-tree person. That independence is so important to them that they just need space. They just need to be away from people. It has nothing. They have an intensity which, even when they're in a project or when they're with somebody, they're really with them. If they want to be doing something else, they'll be doing something else altogether. They are incredibly bold and forceful, yet at the same time, rather shy. That's, again, kind of a paradox. You don't necessarily think about that when you're looking at a three-tree person. But they're rather shy. They're also incredibly vain. They'll look in a mirror more than most people do. Doesn't necessarily mean that they dress meticulously, but they like to know how they look in the eyes of other people. Very observant about what's going on. In a relationship, they remember things visually very well. What happened when. It's a very difficult number for women. If any of you women are three-tree, in all likelihood, as a child number or as an adult number, you may have experienced some level of difficulty with your family of origin. Simply because at three-tree in this culture, it's usually a woman. Three-tree people are usually very physical, very quick thinking, very agile. Okay? And oftentimes what ends up happening in that situation is that they have a lot of sexual vitality, which oftentimes is difficult for families to deal with, fathers to deal with, and mothers. Mothers oftentimes are very jealous of three-tree women. And fathers, oftentimes there can be a situation of psychological, physical, or sexual abuse that happens for three-tree women. Okay? Very passionate, very, very intense, but at the same time need to sometimes withdraw. They can feel touch-starved as people, but very physical in their expression. Very quick, very spontaneous in their actions. Things just come into their heads very quickly. New ideas, new concepts. But at the same time, they really need to feel a sense of independence in their relationship. Four-tree is a little bit different. Four-tree is your true romantic. These are the people that actually what happens is they meet someone, and suddenly what ends up happening is the movie Gone with the Wind comes into their brain. And suddenly they're seeing this relationship develop in a certain way. And it can be that it has nothing to do with what's actually happening in front of them. They can eventually work on penetrating deeper into what they really want and make it so that their inner vision and their outer world begin to match more consistently. But there can be a tendency to fantasize. But these are people that in a relationship will see the best in a person. They get a general hit of who they like to be with. And then what they do is they allow reality to just sort of dictate how it all sorts itself out, very gradually. Okay? But what will happen is that they will stay committed and they'll allow time. They'll be people that'll just kind of wait for things to get better. They want things to get better in the situation. They like to be independent, but so long as they're in a relationship where someone gives them space, a little bit. I mean, the 3 tree likes to go away entirely, likes to get space to go away, just do something on their own. The 4 tree doesn't need that so much. They just need to be acknowledged to do whatever they're doing in the relationship. They need to feel some level of autonomy. If they don't, the kind of emotion that you get from a 3 tree person or a 4 tree person is usually pent-up frustration. Okay? For the 3 tree, they'll be more vocal about it, or what they'll do is they'll just bottle it up inside, and they kind of like, you just feel like everything's flat and emotionless. For the 4 tree person, what you might get is kind of like a very, very non-committal response to things. Okay? Yeah. Oh yeah, you could see that each one of you has a different way of responding, and also it's going to be who comes into your life. I mean, if you meet other set of twins, then you'll probably be going through similar things. But it can be that just the relationship that you're in will then affect which aspect of that number comes out. Okay. What will happen for a 4 tree person, by the way, that aspect of a 4 tree is that when they really get under stress, they'll really begin to procrastinate. They'll really begin to put things off to the very last moment, and suddenly everything in their life becomes a little bit more panic-stricken. Okay? They can really get themselves into panic situations. They also, as opposed to the 3 tree, who usually, when they're talking to you, they can feel what's going on with you and sort of like be self-correcting about what they're saying. The 4 tree person will say something to you, be so convincing. They usually have very hypnagogic eyes. Very, very convincing. People say, "Why are you looking at me?" It's like, because they think that you're staring at them, and you're not. You're just looking because vision is so important to the tree element. Okay? And you're just looking. Okay? You're just taking it in. Okay? But what ends up happening is they are so convincing that oftentimes they say things, and they're still thinking about it, but everybody else thinks they knew what the 4 tree person meant. And then what ends up happening is, like 2 days later, you find out that you don't understand at all what the 4 tree person meant. And that usually causes all sorts of conflicts in the relationship. Okay? If we look at the 5 earth, okay? The 5 earth person, again, what we're looking at is the yin and the yang, the positive and the negative aspects of it, which can be in terms of the year and in terms of the month. The 5 earth person is the most altruistic of all the numbers. They are there for other people. They care for other people a great deal. Their care for other people, however, is usually kind of an unusual kind of care. They don't solve problems for other people in a normal fashion. They are usually very central to other people's lives. Okay? But at the same time, and they problem solve quite well for other people, but they're oftentimes misunderstood in relationships because the way in which they solve problems for people or the way in which they interact is in some ways kind of very factual. All right? There's not a whole lot of like soft emotion that can be part of the 2 earth that's there. Yet they can be very, very passionate, very, very intensely passionate people. And in their passion, they are very giving to the other person. And in their passion, also, they can treat sex like aerobics. It can just be sheer physical fun that has no other objective other than just the physical experience of having fun. All right? There's no great emotional ups or downs that are involved in it. It's just like, hey, this is just great to do, They also have very, very strong mood swings. They can feel great and they can feel horrible within a few minutes. People like them, people hate them. You really get on with them, and then another person says, I don't see how you can relate to that person. That person is totally gross and disgusting. I can't find anything, it's like I just can't relate to this person at all. They usually have like a very, very mixed review of who they are as people in their relationships. People really get on with them, find them very inspiring, or people find them real hard to deal with. Very, very difficult people to deal with. They are also very, very stoic, okay? They will put up with things. It's like you ask them to do something, and they'll say to you, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it. And you go, well, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. You don't show signs of codependency. And they say, hell, it just needs to be done. And so they will put themselves out in relationships to get things done, even if they don't think it's any good. Even if they don't think, they'll see the meaning of it, but they won't necessarily go along with it, and they'll still just do it. They'll just get on and do it. Okay. But wide swings in emotions you can expect from interacting with a 5-earth person. Okay? If you're looking at the 6 metal person and the 7, let's go with 6 first. 6 metal corresponds to what's called the primal father. In the 2 earth, you've had the primal mother. In the 6 metal, you find the primal father. So what we had with Diana here, she was a 6-2, okay? So she's hyper-responsible in all of her relationships. That's one of the things that she deals with, okay? 6 metal people feel an inordinate sense of responsibility to their family of origins, oftentimes at a very early age, find themselves worrying and wondering what needs to be done in a relationship, very, very concerned. They can be the youngest of children and still feel more responsible than the oldest one. If a parent dies, they are the one that takes on the responsibilities. Okay? And if they can't take on the responsibilities, they still feel guilty. There's a sense of guilt that's with these people. They have very, very strong ties, very, very strong commitments, which can be almost dogmatic and rigid, which is why dealing with the past is such an important issue for the 6 metal person. In their current relationships, that's one of the things they oftentimes have to do. For a woman, they have to dissociate from their relationship of their husband being like their father, and really beginning to look at how much of my reaction to this person is me reacting to my spouse, and how much of it is my reaction to who my father is that I still carry inside myself. Okay? So that is something that the 6 metal person constantly has to deal with. And for a man, it can be that they feel so responsible and they want to do things as their father had done, or how they define their social role of being father or being nurturer, whatever. All those kinds of things are very, very important for them. Yet at the same time, what's interesting is that although they can be somewhat dogmatic in who they are, they have kind of like this intuitive quality, very psychic. They sort of like suddenly have this way in which they sort of like make leaps in understanding the people around them. Okay? You know, and in many ways what happens is they have to look at not living in their past, but learning from their past, and not getting so caught up in, they can have these kind of intuitions which are not very well grounded. So they need to balance their kind of like their history and their kind of like psychic and intuitive perceptions in relationships. They do not like to show their vulnerabilities. These are people that like to show that they're in control. They don't like very much to be left alone. They prefer to be in company with other people. They like to be in groups of people. They're very socially oriented in many ways. Okay? But they don't like people to see their weaknesses. 7 metal people are a little bit different. 7 metal people can have, it's called the consummate diplomat. These are your diplomatic people. These are your kind of people that say yes when they mean no, or if they think they want to say no, they're never going to say it to you directly. They're going to beat around the bush, drop hints, try and be passively manipulative of what's going on in order for you to get the point of what they're trying to tell you. But they'll never confront you directly. If you looked at the word truth and peace and you put them together and you said, which one would you choose? The 7 metal person will always choose peace. Therefore, a few white lies periodically to sort of like smooth things out is perfectly acceptable to the 7 metal person, simply because of the fact that the ambiance of the relationship is what makes the relationship work. Okay? The coarseness or the harshness of truth does not work for them, and if you hammer them with that, seven-metal person, if you try and confront a seven-metal person, what they will do oftentimes is they will walk out. They'll leave a relationship. And these people have a history in relationships of difficulties with fidelity. They can be people that oftentimes find that they get married later on in life. They are people oftentimes that have several partners. It's kind of like as some people would choose one person and say, this is the person in my life and I'm going to learn everything from this person. The seven-metal person might have a whole bouquet of people that they gradually learn their lessons about life from. Okay? There's all sorts of ways of understanding and working with relationships. And seven metals might learn that over several relationships rather than one. Okay? Other people will learn them from one. If we're looking at the 8 Earth is the kind of person that is very solid, loyal, committed person, but sometimes has a tendency to get obsessed in relationships. Okay? They have a tendency to get obsessed. What happens is they feel very connected to people. When they find someone that they really like, they connect with them very, very strongly. Yet at the same time, in terms of emotion, you might not even know that. You might not even notice that. They're the kind of people that may look as if, the image is that of the mountain. And the mountain shows very few changes. If you look at a mountain, the mountain looks like a mountain. I mean, you might see the seasonal changes, but the actual shape of the mountain doesn't change for centuries. Okay? So what happens is either these are the kind of people that don't show emotion very easily. When they give rise to passion, they are very, very passionate people. But it's very, very slow to build up. And you have to be very patient with an 8 Earth person in terms of their buildup of passion. Once they are committed, they're very strongly committed to a relationship. Okay? But in terms of getting a whole lot of emotion out of them, I usually tell people that have an 8 Earth aspect in themselves that what they need to do is they need to talk more about what's going on. Because they tend to think, well, I know how I'm feeling, why should I say anything to someone else? It doesn't matter. So what has to happen is that they need to realize that even if they don't necessarily want to cry on someone's shoulder, they have to talk about what's going on with them. They need to be able to communicate those things. Okay? 9, fire. Fire is the most romantic of all the numbers. It has a lot of insight, a lot of clarity about what's going on. Yet when it comes to intimate relationships and close relationships, they are the most naive. They are the kind of people that when they look at a situation from afar, they can say, look at what's going on. They see it real clearly. And sometimes they can be very, undiplomatic about what they see. It's almost like they have X-ray vision. They see the person, but they see all the person's baggage as well. And so they say, oh, look at that person's wearing polka-dotted underwear today. Nobody wants to know that they are wearing polka-dotted underwear, but the 9 fire person sees this, or they see character flaws. And they'll comment about those flaws as easily as they'll comment about strengths. It just goes both ways. They just see what they see. Yet if something is close up to them, it's almost as if that perspective is lost. So what ends up happening is they take people that are close to them at face value. And oftentimes what ends up happening as a result is if the other person in their life has covert intentions, they won't see it. They are people that, although fire is a very dynamic element, it is dependent upon the fuel that it burns. So consequently, these are people that, although they look very charismatic and control situations, in order for them to feel inspired, they need to have people around them that inspire them. And more often than not, what happens for them is they usually find people relatively easy. Or let's say what happens is, like a flame, you get moths that come to you all the time if you're a 9 fire person. You have people being attracted to you all the time. And oftentimes what has to happen for a 9 fire person is they have to be able to discriminate who they want to relate to and who they don't want to relate to. Because what can end up happening is that they can end up with all sorts of turkeys in their lives that they don't want. Okay? Now, so we've talked a little bit about each one of these dimensions, okay, and possibly you've found that you're one thing and then you're another thing as well. So what I'd like to do is take a few examples. Let's just see. I think what I'd like to do, because of time, is look at a whole relationship, okay? So I'd say decide amongst yourselves who you want me to analyze. But right now, why don't we go with someone who just gives it to me? I'll stand here and someone decide amongst yourselves and give me a relationship. All right. Oh, you want a business relationship? Okay. All right, a 6 and a 4, that's who you are? And a 9 and a 9. Okay. Those are the two numbers. Oh, that's you. Okay, so you're both women, so I know this. Okay. So first of all, in terms of the situation, each number is associated with a masculine and feminine aspect, for one thing. All right, so you're a 6 and a 4. Your year is a 6, and your second number is a 4. So you're what's called a masculine-feminine configuration. 6 is masculine, 4 is feminine. What that's going to mean for you is that you're very objective. You see things clearly, yet at the same time, you are someone that, although you have clarity with what's going on, if the emotions run high in a situation, in all likelihood, you're going to try and be, what's going to happen is you're going to sacrifice your spontaneous intuition for being secure. So like you'll go for safer options, okay? You'll tend to hedge in that way. You're also, if we're looking at the laws of elements, metal, what's your name? Nancy. Okay, I'm going to put Nancy here. This is how I analyze a relationship, in fact. Okay, because we're going to look at solving or looking at how this relationship works. Here's Nancy, big Nancy, here's her number 6, and here's little Nancy. I'm going to use that because that's a child number. Nancy 4. Okay, and here's Heather. Heather and Heather are right here. Heather and Heather. All right. Not only do you have that tendency to be sort of controlling of your responses, you have